flash and hack. They keep on dissing me, with no dexterity. Wait until they hear the chorus. Sooner or later, the dice land on the table. You know that's what fables are made of. Everybody sing, oh yeah, critical hit. My main man did double damage with it. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. This is a critical hit. My main man did double damage with it. Oh yeah, it's a critical hit. My main man did double damage with it. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. It's a critical hit. Now it's wall to wall, what your foes are falling, but it's time to pause, cause Mother Nature's calling. I'll be back in a second and I'll continue the reckoning. They will still be waiting for us, and the pressure grows to make a save and throw, to introduce some move, we turn the lights down low. My armor's exposed, I'm getting full of holes. Think I need another chorus. Sooner or later, the dice land on the table. You know that's what fables are made of. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. My main man did double damage with it. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. This is a critical hit. My main man did double damage with it. Oh yeah, it's a critical hit. My main man did double damage with it. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. It's critical. That ain't how we roll. Oh no, it ain't stolen. We on a roll. Hey, we on a rollin'. That ain't how we roll. Oh no, it ain't stolen. We on a roll. Hey, we on a rollin'. Sooner or later, the dice land on the table. You know that's what fables are made of. Oh yeah, it's a critical hit. My main man did double damage with it. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. This is a critical hit. My main man did double damage with it. Oh yeah, it's a critical hit. My main man did double damage. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. It's critical. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. This is a critical hit. Oh yeah, it's a critical hit. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. It's critical. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. My main man did double damage with it. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. This is a critical hit. My main man did double damage with it. Oh yeah, it's a critical hit. My main man did double damage with it. Everybody sing, oh yeah, it's a critical hit. It's critical.
It's a critical hit. That's what I'm talking about. What's going on, everybody? Welcome, Arvanauts, to a Friday night stream. It is March 16, 2018, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time. I hope everyone is doing well and is looking forward to another awesome Masters of the Dungeon show. I am certainly excited about it. I hope you guys are too. Before we get started, let me remind everybody about ways to support the stream. If you haven't already done so, please consider following the channel. That is always a big help. If you haven't already done so, please consider supporting the channel as well by checking out the Discord with !ArvCord, where we always are hanging out in between streams, which is always a good time. !ArvTube will get you over to my YouTube channel where you can check out past broadcasts of the stream. I think I said !ArvCord and thing. Oh yes, !ArvTweets, that's the other one. !ArvTweets will get you over to my Twitter. If you do !CTT, that'll allow you to retweet the stream, which would be really lovely. That thing that Praetor's Rejects just did, that host for 10 viewers, is always appreciated. Thank you so much, Praetor's Rejects. And thank you for all of you, by the way, who are hanging in with us. I'm sorry that I'm a little late. I had some family stuff that I had to attend to. So it's on me. It's not my co-hosts. It was just me. But we are ready to go nonetheless. !ArvTreon will allow you to support the Patreon. We've got a lot of cool stuff going on the Patreon right now. You can inspire my players in one of my many Dungeons & Dragons campaigns during the course of the month. If you support the Patreon at a certain level, you can also also get a copy of one of my band's albums. You can get an epic poem or character background written about you. You can get professional critiques of your writing, etc. So there's a lot of cool stuff available for you, and a lot of stuff that you can do in getting the channel forward. Once we get up to 600, we will have a talisman tournament, the second talisman tournament. We already, if we can maintain this amount that we have now through April 1st, we already have a second Our Vocalist cast on tap in April, hopefully, or if not that May. And we will also have Arvanaut Idol 3 coming up as well as a consequence of where the Patreon is sitting. So thank you to all of you who have supported it so far, and please consider supporting if you haven't already. And last, that sub button right above the sub window. We're right around 50 subs right now. So the higher we can get in those sub numbers, the more stuff that we can also do for you guys, and some cool things you can get, including that emote, that Get Hyped emote that people are using here as well. Tonight we have got Masters of the Dungeon. Tomorrow we do have Dungeons and Dragons with Infinity and Beyond. So I'm looking forward to D&D with Infinity and Beyond. That is coming at you guys tomorrow. But tonight we have got Masters of the Dungeon, our DM roundtable show. And so I'm going to unmute myself so the gentlemen, my fine co-hosts, know that we are ready to go. And then I'm going to unmute them. And then I'm going to head over there. Look at them. There they are in all of their glory, including player not available, about whom I will speak more in just a moment. But I am pleased, as always, to be joined by my wonderful co-hosts. And I will start, actually, by welcoming someone who hasn't been with us for a couple of months, because he's been moving, as he told us, to the greatest place in recorded time. And that, of course, is our good friend Dave from the Digital DM. Hello, Dave. How are you? Welcome. And so are you in the greatest place of all recorded time? Is that
I think I am, yeah. I just moved to El Paso. So back on January 16th, it was the day that it snowed, and I saw snow for the first time. I got to drive on black ice and almost end my life. So yeah, it's pretty awesome. I'm in Texas now. I left Florida, and it's awesome here in Texas.
He was sitting there talking to Askrid and us, Askrid and me, about like, oh yeah, so the windshield wipers, it was cold and like they almost snapped off, and I'm like, yep, been there. I know exactly what you're going through.
I had to stop because the two little metal arms were scraping the windshield.
It was a different experience. I love how you have to go to Texas to actually find snow. But that's cool.
It doesn't snow here. It barely does. And, as I was driving through the next morning, as I'm driving on this black ice, the whole state was like closed. I mean, it was just crazy.
Yep. Well, they were welcoming you in style, welcoming a Florida boy to the world of Texas.
They were all saying, we don't know how to handle the snow here in Texas.
Yep.
Holy cow, everything's closed up.
I've talked before about that on my family. My in-laws are from Seattle, and I remember being out there some years ago, and there was a storm with maybe 5 inches hit the ground, and like you would have thought it was the blizzard of '08. Like people are like putting chains on tires. I'm like, Jesus Christ, chains on tires? Like my dad did that in '78 on our old Maverick. Like what the hell?
You get that every day where you're at.
Yeah, man. Like that's a Tuesday.
Watching anyone south of Maryland prepare for the winter is
exactly.
hilarious.
They're always frightened about it, but
it's always entertaining.
But it is always a pleasure to have Dave back with us. And
it's good to be back.
Yeah, welcome back into the saddle, man. It's good to have you back with us. And speaking of people who knows something about winter weather, because he lives in my relative neck of the woods, and that, of course, is Askren. Hello, Askren. How are you? And are you familiar with the winter weathers? Have you ever had experience?
I live on Long Island. Yes.
Right.
Yes, I am. And I am also, I should point out, I'm completely done with snow at this point. The only thing that would make this winter, that would kind of ruin this winter even more, is if I go to PAX East in in 2 weeks. And like last year, it is snowing and freezing there too.
Yep.
I'll just be done forever.
Yep, absolutely. It's funny too, because I live in, whoa, dear God. Wow, and Tendurcia with the Echo Alpha with the gift sub to Tendurcia. Thank you, man. Thank you, Echo Alpha X5. Thanks, X5, dude, and thank you. Welcome to the Arvanauts, Tendurcia. Thank you, Echo. That's awesome, man. I appreciate it. Thank you. It's very kind of you. Let's get some Arvany hypes in there. Thank you, man. Yeah, it's funny, too, because, I live in basically the North Bronx. So when, snow hits us, when snow hits, we live in Riverdale. It's a nice area of the North Bronx.
Okay.
When we live in, when snow hits us, that's one thing. But, like, when I go to teach at St. John's, I'll have my group group of students that don't show up because they were on Long Island, which is the place that gets slammed by all the storms that miss us. So
Yeah,
it's in the
basically.
city, and they're basically like, New York will get away with it, except Long Island, which will be hammered with 6 feet of, hail and all that kind of stuff. So
I just as early as today, I believe, I was thinking, I just randomly thought, I'm like, I don't know why this happened. It just did. And I was like, who the fuck gives any, like, who cares about the Bronx? Like, I actually thought that exact thought
wow,
today.
it's like that, is it? It's like that.
It's one of, I don't know if anyone knows anything about New York, but the Bronx is the place that you actually forget exists.
No.
Like,
Wait a
anywhere
minute.
else.
This is not true. This is not true. If you're this is a lie. Staten Island you forget about, and that's the fact.
That is
That
true,
is a
yeah.
dead fact. Staten Island, you just send people there to die. But like the Bronx is not that way. The truth is that if you're in Manhattan, you basically believe that there are no other boroughs. So that's how I think everyone can agree universally on that. But anyway,
Manhattan and like Brooklyn, Queens. That's
Yes.
like that's New York for me.
Yes, I can understand. Well, there is something to the north. We are only a mile south of Yonkers. It's the way we like to think of it is that anything from Yonkers up is upstate, whether it's Buffalo or whether it's Yonkers. It's all
it's the Bronx and then Westchester. Is how it goes.
Westchester, exactly. Anyway, it's a pleasure to have Askren back, and welcome
Thank
everybody to our DM show. And I want to start, as I usually do, by asking you gentlemen a little bit about how campaigns are going, and I guess I'll work in the reverse order. Is there something cool? I'm sure there is, but what cool thing has happened of late in one of your campaigns you can talk about? And I'll start with Askren. I'll work back in this direction. Do you want to highlight something in Writhing Moon, Razor Coast? Like, what do you want to bring to the table here?
Let me think. Can you skip me? Give me a minute. I actually, so I was supposed to write something down to think about this, and then I got caught up in prep for my game that's happening immediately after this, and so I'm gonna need a moment. Just
do you want me to go to Dave first?
Skip.
Okay,
Yeah.
Dave, I'll allow him to pass. So muted, Dave.
I'll cover for you, Askren.
Yes. So tell me what you got, Dave. What have you got something cool in a campaign of late that you want to bring to the table?
Well, actually, I took probably about a little over a month off because of the move and everything.
Right.
And, I just took that full-time position with Fantasy Grounds back in December as well. So that's definitely demanding. So I was running 6 games basically at one time. That would go actually 7 games in a 2-week cycle. So I had to trim my games down because working full time, trying to do a full-time YouTube channel, trying to run all these games on my Patreon page, it was just impossible.
Right.
So I basically cut 5 games out. I'm down to 2 games, which we just started back a couple of weeks ago here at the beginning of March, and I'm running a 5e Tomb of Annihilation. That's going to be that is actually every other Friday, and then I just my favorite module in 5e is The Lost Mine of Phandelver. So I took my group that we just finished up, The Ghost of Dragonspear Castle, which is my other favorite.
Very good. Yeah, it's a good module, yeah.
We just started doing the Lost Mine of Phandelver. So another thing with my groups, and those games are actually going really good. The Lost Mine of Phandelver game we play tomorrow. In fact, we play the next 3 Saturday nights, which is going to be awesome. That game started out brilliantly. I just had 2 new players start that we'll be introducing them tomorrow, some quirky way. But both games are going really good. And another thing with my games is I've been running D&D 5e for many years now. I've been running it. You know this, Arv, before it actually became officially named 5th edition, back when it was still D&D Next.
D&D Next, yeah.
Back when it was, 2 D&D streams on Twitch every night. So, I've been running it for a long time, and I want to take a break and get away from 5e for a little bit. So my games, they have to have an open mind, and I'm going to be doing I guess you could say sort of like a Quantum Leap type of game where we're going to be journeying through all kinds of different, same players, same character names and all that stuff, but we're going to be jumping to different systems and different times. So we could end up modern day Earth. We could end up on another planet. We could be doing something sci-fi related. We could be doing something Savage Worlds related. So, I'm going to be this year I had sort of like an epiphany towards the end of last year, and I wanted to do other things. I wanted to do more open world stuff. I wanted to kind of get away from modularized content,
Right.
and I want to start doing my own stuff again. So having 2 games now, that's definitely going to allow me to do that. And I'm really looking forward, and especially with the Quantum Leap type of gaming, we're going to be doing Savage Worlds, Call of Cthulhu, Pathfinder 2e when it comes out later on this year, all kinds of stuff. So I'm looking forward.
Yeah, that's
But the
good.
game,
That's good stuff. That's you're gonna doing more games than our friend Eric Vulgaris, who like knows more different systems than you can shake a stick at. That guy does different stuff all the time. I do want to acknowledge very quickly. I don't know why my notification did not go off, but Chaotix, thank you for the resub. Chaotix, who is super awesome. Chaotix, who is subbed for 8 months in a row. You are my hero. Thank you, dude. I think I've only been on for 8 months affiliated, so thank you very much for the resub. I appreciate it. I'm sorry that my notification did not go off. I will have a stern discussion with my sub notification system later, but thank you, dude, so much. I really appreciate it. Chaotix is a big help to this channel in a lot of ways, as you will find more out about not that long from now. But that's cool. Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day with different systems, and I was thinking about the fact that I'm ultimately going to be very shortly, well, I actually am right now, running about 4 to 5 campaigns, and pretty much all of them are some variation of 5e at this point, because I have 2 5e campaigns, and then I have Adventures of Middle-earth, which is a 5e based system, and Esper Genesis, which is a 5e based system, which I think is demonstrative of the strength of 5e, honestly. But it's also something which is not, I don't have to move my headspace around as much, whereas for what you guys are talking about, being able to shift completely, like Video Store Cowboy, who does the 6 and 20, and then he was doing Blades in the Dark, right now he's doing City of Mist, and what he has to work his head around getting from that into something like a 5th edition D&D thing is very different system-wise. So
see that's actually interesting, because I'm in the, like, right now I'm working on a new project, and I'm doing what I tend to do, which is take an adventure from one system and introduce it to players who are familiar with another system, but then actually run it in a third system that is completely different. Because what I've been finding is, while I like 5e and I like D&D in general, it's not the best for doing certain things, right? Like, there are ways to get better feelings for other games out of other systems. And so for my next project, it's more of an urban adventure, an urban fantasy adventure. And yes, it's meant to be run in in Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons, and it'll work just fine. But I want the game itself to feel a little bit more gritty and like street level, and kind of dirty than just superheroes slinging magic spells. So I'm kind of hunting down different ways to play with that in what kind of system might actually be because I could run, because what's the other option? Put another 5th edition campaign on my schedule? Sure, that's cool, but like, there's other stuff out there.
No, for sure.
Here's something, guys. As a DM, you have to get pleasure out of playing too. And and of course, 5e is the flavor of the year. It's going to be the flavor of the year for years to come. But you as a DM, you have to get satisfaction too. And when, you're not enjoying running 5e 5-6 times a week, your players are having fun, and that's great. But if you're not having fun, that's going to reflect on your DMing too. So if you're not having fun, you're not going to be fully 150% into it.
Yep.
And
I also
I
just the community as a whole, like the role-playing community on Twitch, like, there's a lot of other stuff out there, and there's a lot of there's a lot of other way. Like, I think when we play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, we breed a lot of very specific ideas about how games are played, and content is shown. It's like, I kind of want to stretch my legs, and I want to try to play with new ideas. There's a lot of things that I couldn't do if I was doing them in D&D, and also I just don't want my schedule to have like 6 Dungeons and Dragons, like 5th edition shows in a row. Like, that's just, to me, that's there's a little bit of boring there. For sure.
Although I will say that, and part of this is just because I was saying to the guys before we went live that, 2 of these campaigns, Adventures of Middle-earth and Esper Genesis, that I have, a whole lot of 5e flavors, but I have to say that part of the Adventures in Middle-earth thing for me, one of the reasons that I really like Cubicle 7 with the Adventures in Middle-earth thing is because I really think they nailed the feel of the world, and it does feel different to me than playing just standard D&D. And a lot of that is because they're sort of versed in the lore. I think some of the rules that they added, the journeys rule, the audiences rule, those things are really brilliant. The idea of corruption, those things are things which are fundamental mechanics to AME, which are not obviously part of D&D, that I really think play well. The one of my campaigns right now is in the midst of trying to basically get back to this town and basically warn them, actually not a town, Bjorn's home, and get back to warn Bjorn of this would-be bandit king who's trying to surprise them with a bunch of people. So they're basically trying to essentially outpace them, which means they're already exhausted. They haven't had any rest. So we're going to get a whole lot of attention paid to exhaustion rules. That's a part of D&D. But the notion of the long journey, the long drawn out, it's so wearying. That is such a Tolkien thing. And the fact is, in AME, you can't actually do a long rest except in sanctuary places, of which there are very few. In fact, one of the things they can do as a fellowship undertaking is try to open up a place for a sanctuary. Why? Because otherwise you can't do a goddamn long rest.
I think that's a great thing that they added, because 5e is, you could just take, even though you're supposed to only be able to benefit one a day. I mean, players want to take long rests after every single fight.
And then it becomes like Icewind Dale, right? Where you spend every 3 seconds, fight, rest. And it takes 6 months.
5-minute workday.
Yeah, exactly. So I do think that some of those things, and Esper Genesis is another one that really has a different feel to it. But in general, I agree with you. I think there's something to that. I have to say, and I've really been having to hold myself back because I really do not have time to put yet another campaign on the list. But man, I've been playing Lone Wolf, the gamebook playthroughs with my chat, and Cubicle 7 has a Lone Wolf adventure, like the whole role-playing series. Oh man, there's a part of me that's like, could I fit one more in? That my schedule is like, no, my calendar slaps me around. It's like, don't ever say that again. I'm like, yeah, but it's Lone Wolf. And they're like, look, for Sommerland or not, you're not going to do this. But it's tempting because, it has that different mechanical feel. So I agree with you. It is cool to see other systems come into play. And I was doing last year some advanced fighting fantasy RPG, which I think was Arian Games was putting that one out. And that was a lot of fun too. But still, I guess that default of D&D 5e has made it a little easier for me with that many campaigns running. So. But it's good stuff. So cool. Well, I've already talked a little bit about that one campaign. I'm really excited about that because the watching them try to outpace the journey, and seeing how they're able to, because you could tell they sort of had their face fell because they were kind of like their faces fell collectively because they're like, so how long? So he's heading out. I'm like, the bandits are on their way. I mean, they made it clear they're on their way. How are we going to catch them? Like, well, it's going to be difficult. If you go straight north on a forced march, you might be able to catch up to them. And like, God damn it. So they're doing it. And you can tell they're just kind of like, oh crap, this is going to hurt. It's going to hurt big time on the other side. And that gives them this feel of the world that they're in. So it's neat stuff. I'm looking to see how they handle it.
So, just as far as something that I've been really interested, I'll keep this really brief. I'm thinking about all the stuff that's happening in my campaigns. There's so much going on, so much different stuff happening that it's kind of hard to pick which one is my favorite. Like for example, in Mouse Guard, we sort of were in the. I don't know if you know anything about Mouse Guard lore, but there's the outside of the mouse territories is like the dark lands, like the weasels live there in their dark heather tunnels underground, and they have like, if you imagine
there's a scent barrier, right? Isn't there a scent barrier?
Yes, there's like a border between them, so it's like the civilized lands, and then there's like Mordor on the other side of the border where wild animals like wolves and things live out there. And we are essentially in the Weasel Kingdom, like either killing or politicking our way towards the center, where we're going to try and replace the Weasel King with his son, who is our ally. And so, like,
wow.
we had sent one of our own players in as like a bait to meet with his uncle in prison, and we don't know where he is. He's getting tortured somewhere, and we went in and like killed, like, and then out of nowhere, Maggie Crone just decides to join the game and plays this amazing character called Tiny Charlie, who helps us slay one of the Tunnel Lords. It was a fantastic night. But I'm so interested in like the political stuff and the subterfuge and things, because it's mouse guard, it's a tiny little mouse, and then but it's just as dark and gritty and dramatic as any D&D game, and I love the contrast there so much. But I think and then in Writhing Moon, my players sort of just met face to face for the first time in the heart of this giant monster. They're literally in a city-sized living organism that they're crawling through its tubes and things, and in the heart they met one of the most powerful, this sort of person whose name they've been hearing all campaign, and he just banished them all into nightmares. And so because we're having some absences over the course of the month, we decided that we're going to be playing the next 3 sessions are going to be solo sessions with each player playing through their own personal nightmares.
Oh my God.
And so I've been writing those, and I've been delving real deep into horror stuff to try and like screw with these people as much as I can and just dig up every trauma that we can to make them memorable. But the thing that kind of got me the most is the game I play right after this is my Pathfinder Curse of the Crimson Throne campaign. My players are level 11 and nearly impossible to hurt in combat.
Yep.
They have like a 36, like one of them has like a 36 AC against giants, and they're fighting giants. They do so much damage. They're just way overtuned. And so I beefed up this one boss, and they fought him, and he was a tough fight. But it wasn't that particular fight that was my favorite moment. It was the fact that at the end of the fight, when they were basically freeing some prisoners and thinking about how they were going to get out of the tower, this like 400-foot high tower,
Right.
They hear the beating wings and the roaring of what can only be a dragon on the floor above them. And all the players are just like, holy shit. Like I've never really run a dragon in D&D at full power, like as a real encounter. Like I've never had a campaign get to the level where they actually stand toe to toe with a dragon. And so this was like, even after, like it's just one of those satisfying moments where you actually get to, the players get to think, fuck, like we just got through with a really tough fight.
Yep.
Now there's a dragon where we gotta go. Like we have to find a way. And that was, I think that was my favorite moment of the last week.
That's nice. That's like, yeah, that's when these guys are like, this is really bad. This is really, really bad. I mean, my guys are playing through the Rise of Tiamat, so they're going to be facing more than a dragon. They'll be.
This is not the last. This is just the first.
Yeah, no, the first, right. One of many to come. That's cool though. And you're right, Rock God. Watership Down is a good example of how you can get a very, very gritty fantasy novel that's got lots of cute rabbits and dogs, and yet there's a lot of power in that book. Man, I read that again with my daughter last year, and such beautiful. Watership Down, because it's an incredible book. It's a great book. Why? Because it's too scary for her?
Not a children's movie.
Oh, no. I did not the movie. No, the movie gave me nightmares for years. No, I'm not talking about the movie when I was a kid. No, the book. But even the book, it's got powerful moments. Bigwig and the Wire and the whole bit. Yeah, it's definitely creepy, but a really, really beautifully written book. And actually, Richard Adams just recently passed away. He was in his late 90s. But really beautiful book. And yeah, beautiful, but still dark and gritty despite little rabbits. But well, let's talk a little bit about the topic of the day that we were hoping to bring up here. And so that folks know, by the way, in chat, what we'll do is we'll spend a little time talking about this topic and riffing back and forth with chat. We'll talk a little bit about a couple of new products that we might be interested in that have come our way or that we know about, and then we'll do a little QA with chat before we wrap up at the end of this. But I was hoping we could talk a little bit here about something which has come up quite a bit over the last month that I've been hearing from people about, and that is about improvisation from the DM's point of view. And there's sort of two versions of this. So one of them is the improvising an adventure when the players have gone way off the rails, which does not, in this case, necessarily mean a bad thing. It's just they've gone in a different direction than you expected. And I know, Askren, you talked a little bit about this with Razor Coast, so maybe you can get more into that. So that's one example of improvisation. The other one is improvising NPCs and characters that become a much bigger deal than you thought that they would be, right? Basically, like players just pick up an NPC and they're like, oh my God, this guy. And all of a sudden, your randomly inserted merchant in the fourth store ends up being some amazing person that they love, and you have to make up something for them. So I'll throw that out to you guys. How do you handle improvising the adventure level and then the character level? Dave, you wanna grab that one first?
Sure. Well, there's a lot of dungeon master guides out there. It doesn't matter what or GM section of any kind of core rule book that you read for whatever game or setting you're playing. It doesn't talk about when your players want to go. There are some exceptions to the rule here, but it doesn't explain how to handle your players wanting to do this. And I'm a huge advocate of not saying no to your players unless it's totally ridiculous. Then sometimes once in a great while I'll say no. But whenever your party wants to do something else, allow them to do it. I mean, go for it. I always like to have a couple of extra kind of like side adventures that usually aren't in books or anything like that, or something that I can come up with right off of my head, that if the players want to derail, because I run a lot of modularized stuff just because of in the past I've run 6-7 games every 2 weeks or every week, so it's easier for me to do that instead of writing content for every single game because of the time that it takes.
Sure.
So when a player will go off, I'll give them something on the side and let them have fun with it, but I ultimately kind of steer them back on course, and I do it in a way to where it's not blatantly obvious, like, oh, you have to go back here. I'll just kind of steer them back. Just an example would be maybe an NPC. You would introduce a new NPC that would kind of lead them back onto the path because maybe she has something to do with the adventure in the future. Mm-hmm. But even though she doesn't, you have to now adjust to your players, which are taking things off of the tracks, as you want to say, and that NPC can bring them back onto the track. So that's what I do. Now, as for characters that I've introduced, yes, there's been one, probably the most famous would be Mick the Peddler. He's this traveling Smirfneblin that drives around in an apparatus of Quailish, and he's a shyster, and he's a wheeler and dealer. So this is actually introduced by one of my viewers in one of my one-shot games, and then everybody loved him so much, and we brought him back. Now he's got like this huge background story, like you were saying. You want your viewers and your audience to know more about this NPC. So of course, Mick the Peddler had a huge background put in, made all this art for him and all this stuff. Then I've also had Splug from Keep on the Shadowfell in 4th edition. He became pretty famous. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, Splug. He became pretty famous. And then I actually played him as Splug. I played a goblin cleric as Splug in another game that I was playing in. So that was pretty fun. Then I also had another one. He's sort of like the ladies' man. He's in like a lot of the taverns that I put together. His name is Bandettas, and he's a
For a minute, I thought you meant Splug was the ladies' man, and I was really confused. Ladies!
Well, I guess he probably would be the ladies' man for the goblin race.
I guess the ladies' goblin. Yeah, okay.
He definitely would be. But then I have Bandettas where, a lot of people like Banderas, and, we'll go into this, especially if there's any kind of anywhere there's any kind of lore information that's needed, Banderas will show up most of the time. Mm-hmm. So, but all of those characters that have been introduced now have huge background stories. They actually have fully statted character sheets. So there's been a lot of time investment into those NPCs to inject them into your world. And plus, when you have viewers, they want to see those. They want to see those characters. They want to hear those voices. Yep. They want to see them on the tabletop. So it's fun to inject those once in a while.
And of course, one of the cool things is when you can do that without making it seem as if like, oh, I always planned to have every conceivable stat for this NPC. I was aware of the fact that you were going to be interested in this character, even if you had no clue that they were going to go after him as a concept. I actually had, I'll bring up one and then I want to hear Askren's take on this, but I actually had a character whose name is Kalismana, who's a brass dragon, I believe, or no, copper dragon from Rise of Tiamat. And I happen to have a guy, we're playing Storm King's Thunder in another campaign of mine, also online with the GOG stream team, because I stream for them once a week, and I play this D&D campaign with them. And I've actually just added a new person into that mix, which I'm really excited about. I finally got a full crew over there. But anyway, so this Copper Dragon was originally from the Rise of Tiamat, and it's one that those players in my flagship campaign, the Rise of Tiamat, really like. They think he's really cool, and he's kind of this irreverent irreverent young dragon who's kind of like, yeah, they don't really give me the keys to the store, hardy har har, but he's still a dragon, right? Like the so-called young dragon, which is still hundreds of years old and could destroy, villages with no problem and all that kind of thing. But of course, he's a good dragon, so he's kind of irreverent and all that sort of thing. So there was a call in Storm King's Thunder for this copper dragon to show up, and I'm like, guess who showed up then? Welcome to Kalismana, because it's the same general area. Like, there's no reason that he couldn't, historically, wherever it was going to be relative to the other campaign, he was still going to be alive, and so I brought him over there, and one of my players plays in both campaigns, so he was cracking up upon the appearance of this copper dragon. The other player's like, this guy's cool, and this player is kind of like, yes, he almost seems vaguely familiar to me, as if in another life somewhere I might have seen some word of him. But that was great. I didn't expect that, but it was neat to be able to have that callback, and that I cannot emphasize enough how much that contributes to the sense of a world that is alive, an NPC that moves among and through, again, assuming the eras are the same, moving among and through things. It's one of the geniuses of work like, let's say, Forgotten Realms, that you can have Elminster show up in different places, and that ties together the world, or Volo, or Drist, or, whatever, like these archetypal heroic figures, and also archetypal villainous creatures as well. Those things can really help tie these things together and tie your world together. So, I mean, you have to be sparing about it, and you don't want to immediately make it a Marvel DC crossover. But I just thought it was really neat that I was able to, that it worked out that way, and that the characters were so invested in this NPC, in the adventure. He became legendary to them.
Players love that, man. When you introduce like Drizzt or Wolfgar or Regis the Halfling, or Cat Imagery, man, players love that. I did that in a couple of my really early games, and they were like, wow, we're actually face to face with Drizzt Do'Urden.
Yep. See, those for me, those are always iffy references, mostly because I have not, I wouldn't use a character like that because I've not read enough about them to even remotely be it's like, for me, it'd kind of be, it'd be like me trying to drop Princess Bride quotes. Like, it's just not going to work.
Well,
it's never going to happen.
True. It's not a good idea to bring up things like, oh, you see this guy with 2 scimitars, and you're like, oh, awesome. So what are the names of the scimitars? You're like,
I don't know. He's just talks like a normal dude. I don't fucking know.
They walk behind your reference, and there's 2 guys with cigarettes holding up the 2-dimensional set. And you're just like, what are you doing back here? And you're like, oh crap, don't come back here. Yes,
that's why I prefer characters that's why I like the Pathfinder mythos a lot, because the Pathfinder world, there are a lot of characters that kind of fit within it, and that some of my players are very savvy about the world, and so they'll know about nations and people and stuff, but none of these characters they don't have books and stuff, so they don't know how, a long time ago, a player said, when we were talking about a new campaign, he's like, oh, we should do a Forgotten Realms campaign. I know everything about the Forgotten Realms. I'm like, yeah, well, I don't. So that's not going to happen.
If you know everything about FR, why don't you?
No. It's like, I don't want to run a setting where you know everything.
Exactly.
Yeah, because he's going to be bringing all this up while you're running the game. He's going to say, well, don't forget about this and this and this, and then that would just be a train wreck.
I will say about.
So lay it on us, Askren. What do you got as far as the improvising characters, etc.?
Yeah, so improvising is a really interesting thing, because I used to be, when I started DMing, I was horrible at it, or I thought I was horrible at it, and I probably still am, but I think there's this tendency for especially newer DMs to not really understand what improvising means and what it entails, but it also, and so there's this feeling when you're a new DM that you need to prep everything. You need to write down every NPC. You need to write down every bit of treasure, everything that's in the room, every path that you're going to lead the players down. And then I think improv is a product of gaining more confidence in yourself, specifically because here's the thing is I don't consider myself a very good improv guy, but I know enough about what I'm able to come up with on the fly. I know enough about where my limitations are that I can fake my way through just about anything. And I think that's what DMs tend to do a lot, is they tend to fake their way through things. And one of the things that I do a lot of is when I if anyone knows Writhing Moon, you will know I have a tendency to not write notes. I do prep for Razor Coast on stream, but that's like the most that I ever actually prep for any game, because usually my notes are just a couple lines on a piece of paper, vaguely lining up things that I either want to make sure I don't forget to try and get to in that session, or little descriptions of things to remind me what's going on.
Askren mailing it in, confirmed. No, just kidding.
Yeah, 100%.
But
that's the thing, is because then what I know as a DM, I know now that, for example, when I bring my players into a situation, I know I can create a picture in my head, and in describing that, like, okay, here, how do I best phrase this? Let's say you want to put your players in front of a dungeon, but you don't have a dungeon prepared. You don't even know what this dungeon looks like or what it's about. But you have to create something because the players heard there was a dungeon down the valley and they decided to go down the valley.
Yep.
So, okay, you start racking your brain. You say, okay, at the bottom of the valley, there's kind of these gnarled trees and a winding trail. Okay, I'm getting a tone in my head, maybe a color palette. And I'm just going to start describing details. And each detail kind of paints a broad stroke about this picture.
Yep.
And as a DM, as you just talk and you just fill in those details as you go. What do you want to be there? Do you think, does it make sense that this dungeon would be shaped like a skull opening its mouth? Cool. Sounds great. Go with it. And then where does that lead you? Where does that lead your mind? What detail do you as a DM see next in your head? And then you just, and like, if the players ask about something, that's where you shift your focus to. And as long as you have a couple solid pillars that inform you about the world, like, you know, the basic tenets of the world that you're playing in or you're creating,
right,
anything that you create will be informed by those basic rules, and thus it will make sense. And if it doesn't, you can fix it later. And so improv is just and here's another important thing. Place a challenge in front of your players, and just it'll take time. Like, it'll take up time in your session that you may have not written anything for, right? Like, if you don't know how to, if you need to put a dungeon in front of your players, but you don't know how to fill up an hour of time because they, okay, now they're going to a dungeon, I have nothing written here. I don't know, make a challenge out of getting in the front door. Maybe there's some traps. Maybe there's some things. Like, just make them roll some checks. And then, in the process of failing, I have a rule where if I want something to seem really hard, I just make the first two things that the players try fail. And then by the time they try the third thing, they'll succeed, and it feels like they really fought over a difficult obstacle, and it's taken up time, and it's giving you time to collect yourself, and
right,
that's it. That is just, you fake it, you buy yourself a little time, and then you just pull from your repertoire of fantasy knowledge and things like that. Or you take some time to Google something, like Google a picture of a dungeon, and then there you go. There's your thing. As for NPCs, NPCs are I'm not particularly great at memorable NPCs. It's something I've always wanted to be better at. But I was talking about this with Daryl, I think, because I had just run a one shot for the Daubers, and my NPCs in one shots tend to be cardboard cutouts. They don't have bombastic personalities that you're going to remember down the road, because I don't really use them that way. But so I think for DMs, if you really want to make NPCs that players will remember, it doesn't matter who or what they are. They just have to be larger than life. They just have to have a memorable personality in some way,
right,
whether it be the voice they talk in, or the mannerisms, or how annoying they are, or how dangerous they are, or how ominous. Like, they just have to be, they can't just be a regular person. They have to be a person that is amplified. And then the players will remember that.
I'll have some more to say about that, but go ahead, Dave. You were going to say.
Yeah, to add a little bit of, it sounded like you kind of use Askren like a bullet point list when you write down whatever you're going to do for
basically, yeah.
Session. And that's what I do here. I don't know if you can see
it. White papered it, but
my studio lighting is blanking it out, but I use a lot of color coordination.
I was just assuming you were holding up a blank sheet of paper. Like, this is my prep.
This is my prep.
My nose behind the piece of paper, Askren. But yeah, I do that too. And this is one of my first adventures that I've actually wrote that I'm going to be putting into PDF form. And that's basically how I created this, was just wrote down a bunch of points. And, like we were saying, a dungeon, and, there's no dungeon. I just wrote down, if there's going to be 10 different different entryways, traps, but all that stuff is, I have just one word down. So phylactery is going to be one of the rooms. Armory is going to be another one. And then I just fill in everything around it, because as the more that you DM, you've already seen this, obviously.
Right.
So
That's it. That's what I'm saying. It's just
Right.
pull a picture from we are all fantasy nerds. We all have a million images from a million books, comics, and movies in our head.
Yeah, exactly.
Just reach in there and grab something. I think as a fantasy enthusiast, whether fantasy, sci-fi, whatever story you're telling, you have that already. It's just a matter of having enough confidence to reach in, grab it, and put it in front of the players. And you're right. Like when you get confident in yourself, you will be able to visualize a whole session in your head, like even down to the timing. I know I can run a 3-hour session and hit all of the points within it, right? Even if my players are taking too long somewhere and so like you still hit the intro, you still hit the rising action, you still hit the climax, you still hit the cliffhanger, and for notes, it's like you just jot down, okay, enter the dungeon, puzzle trap, big fight, boss fight, treasure, and then reveal at the end. That's a great session right there, right?
Yeah,
you know all that stuff. It's already there. You just have to be confident enough in yourself. And here's the thing that it sounds like I'm saying, don't ever do any prep, and that's not true. Prep as much as you need to feel confident. That's what I've always said.
I was in that camp when I first started DMing. I've been playing since '84, but I just started DMing within the last 5 years. Yeah. And I made that, I consider it a newbie mistake, as like what you mentioned, as trying to prepare for everything. You're never going to prepare enough because your players are going to do something unexpected every single session that you tried to prep for. I think they're going to do this. So don't do that. Just go with the flow, and don't stress yourself out over all of this enormous prep, because honestly, it's not worth it. Just do bullet points, fill in the blanks around the bullet points. And, if you're doing something more modularized, have something on the side that if you derail, bring them back on course to go to the next point. And I do
want to. That's actually, and this is real quick, and then I'll let Arv not be drowned out here. But the you mentioned running modules. I run a lot of module stuff. I've always enjoyed it. But one of the things I tell people is, if you're going to run a published adventure, something written down, make sure you've read it first. Because you need to know what's coming up on the next page, so you can guide your players back there when they get off track, right? Because otherwise, if they just get off track and you let them keep going, you're not playing the module anymore, and that's fine. You can do that. No one's making you, but you're eventually kind of lose the reins, and you're gonna be like, shit, I don't know where this ends or what this is going on. So know where you're going next. And you mentioned something about kind of guiding the players back, or to on point. A lot of DMs, I've heard it less and less as we've gotten into the 5th edition thing, but back when 5th edition was new and before that, we as Dungeon Masters heard so much every which way about how railroading was the worst crime that you could ever commit. And it's not true. Don't let anyone tell you that's true. It's
not true.
Railroading is a necessity.
The people who say that are the ones that don't like modules. They're totally 100% sandbox. I think in most cases, when people say something like that, they're just pure sandbox DMs. And
even still, I think storytelling railroading is a part of storytelling in general, right? We don't accuse movies or books of railroading us, because a story has a beginning and it has an end, and you need to get there somehow. And so it's the DM's job to kind of guide them there. Now, you want to try and do it subtly and not like just shoving your players back, their attention back onto the goal, but don't be afraid to point them back in the direction they need to go. Or, and when in doubt, you can move the map. They don't need to know that the way that they're traveling is away from the goal. If you just turn the floor under them, so they're pointing back where they need to be.
Well, that's exactly it. Like a lot of it is relating to a few things. First of all, related to that, execution is the key. So if you execute badly, you can railroad badly. You can make it seem as if people are bumping into walls constantly, and as if their choices don't matter, and they're just waiting for you to say the next thing. And I've seen games like that, and those games do suck. They're bad games, but they're bad games not because of railroading per se. They're bad games because they don't take player agency into account. So suddenly it's not collaborative storytelling anymore, and the best D&D is collaborative storytelling, where you have a story that you've established, whether it's a published module or whether it's your own stuff, and then the players are shaping the way in which that story is presented, the way that they play their characters, their interactions with each other, and there are parts and components that make it a different experience, so that my Rise of Tiamat and my player's Rise of Tiamat is very different from another time that I run Rise of Tiamat. How many times did I run players through in the old days Palace of the Silver Princess, right? And every Palace of the Silver Princess run was different because I had different players that were involved in it. So it is relating to execution as much as anything else, to sort of keep it from being something where they're just slamming into these walls. I want to say that one thing about the improvisational thing, which helps quite a bit, because I have been also, like Dave, playing since 83, 84, and DMing for almost that long, about 25 years. And so the thing about this is, for a long time I did quite a bit of high level debate competition. I coached it and I competed in it. And one of the things people used to ask was, how do you get up and give a speech immediately refuting a case that you've just heard? Like literally, they give 7 minutes, you stand right up and you immediately speak. There's no prep time. You're just writing during their speech, you get up and speak. And the answer is because you understand patterns, because there are patterns to the way things, the structure is the same, and you know the way these things break down. You know that they've structured things. They're making an economic argument. They're making a political argument. They're making a moral argument. You know the way that these things generally break down. As a dungeon master, you said it very well, Askren, we are absolutely overflowing, or we should be anyway, with fantasy stuff. And that is one thing where I'll say, if you want to think of it as prep, I mean, I think of it as fun anyway, you need to be reading within the genre that you want to DM. Like the people who want to DM stuff and never read in it, I think are making a mistake. You've got to read in it. And I don't mean modules even, I mean stories, like reading short stories, reading novels, reading stuff like this. And the reason is because it gives you a toolbox, right, from which you can pull multiple things at any time. So when you're talking about going down into the valley, I love that example. You're going out of the valley and you see this winding cavern. Immediately, I imagine Dave is the same way. I'm thinking about, oh, this is a setup maybe for an ambush. I can imagine this being down here. This is probably a river valley, so maybe there are some low grasses that they could use, blah, 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 whatever. Like you're running through that, not because we have, advanced degrees in river valley construction. I mean, at least I don't. It's because I've seen this sort of thing before, and those tropes can be useful because you can draw from them, and then you can make them your own. One of the keys to making a character that you've seen before interesting is, so okay, you're going to have Fergus the Smith, and he's dwarven and he speaks with a Scottish accent. But what makes Fergus interesting is if he has a twin brother that he doesn't really get along with, although when push comes to shove, he does really kind of like him. He just doesn't like to admit it. And Fergus, his twin brother, has been lost for some time. He doesn't like to talk with anyone about it. But knowing about this is stuff that you can make up in your head very quickly. And even if that information never gets out to the players, you don't have to sit down and write thousands of notes about it. It's just something you're imagining in your mind. That will inform the way that they speak to the players as you're addressing them. And if the players are then like, okay, thanks, Fergus, and they take their axe and they walk out, fine. Like, no skin off your nose. You don't have to be like, wait, but you haven't talked to my awesome character, Fergus.
Right.
You
not
just came
every
up with a couple of...
has to become a star.
Right. Not every NPC has to be a star, but the point is you in your mind, you have a pattern that you're going to be able to follow to begin with. And then, as like with the Copper Dragon example that I gave before, if the players really like this character, then you can start developing him, and you can do that a little bit off stream. You can be thinking about it all the time. And that's the other thing I wanted to say about prep, is that I say the same thing to young writers all the time also. Writing and preparation for writing does not happen when you sit down at the keyboard. Preparation for writing happens in between writing sessions. It happens when you're walking around during the day and you're thinking in your mind, sitting in the subway or driving to work, and you're thinking, oh man, that's exactly how I get them. This is how I get them to the fortress. Like, I don't know why I didn't think about this before. I do that as a writer all the time, and I do it because I always have multiple manuscripts that I'm working on. But as a DM, you could be doing the same thing. If you're like, what am I going to do to get this NPC over to this character or whatever, you're thinking in your mind mentally. You're not writing notes. You're not doing anything. In your mind, though, you're preparing it so that when you do sit down to actually play the module, you've played out some ideas in your head about how you want these things to actually work. So that is preparation I think you should be doing, but that doesn't require online writing sessions to do it.
Two quick things I want to say about that. The first is when you were talking about debating is and writing. You as a story, as a writer will obviously, and anyone who is dabbled in writing, or even if you've just watched TV or movies, like have you ever watched a lot of episodes of a TV show and you realize very quickly, wow, every one of these episodes is exactly the same?
Dude, watch Mission Impossible. I started watching that on Amazon Prime, and like the first 5 are all, oh my God. And I love it, but oh my God, it's such a formula.
Any cop show, like any of those group shows, where it's an ensemble cast doing a, cop drama or whatever. Like because if you're doing 10 seasons of this shit, it's all going to be exactly the same. You have your little bit of story, then you have your setup, then you have your investigation, you have your complication, you have your big climax, then you have your finale, and then you have a little bit of lead into the next story bit, right? It's always the same. And if you want to run a great session as a dungeon master every single time, learn basic story structure. Give yourself a hook, like a hook or a setup, some complication, some rising action, a climax, and a cliffhanger. If you do that every session, if you hit those points every session, your players will be like, holy shit, this is great. Every session, it has action and it has intrigue and has all this. And for you, it's literally just, I know what the tone is going to be. I just have to fill in the blanks with what's going to actually happen. Because storytelling is not very complicated, and you can twist it on, turn it, however, in other ways once you get the hang of it. But that, like, for me, that's how I run one shots, is you just make sure you hit those beats and you're good. But
I just one quick thing, and then I just want to say quickly, I totally agree with that. And I think, again, here, the key is how these things are executed, right? So what made Shakespeare the greatest playwright who ever lived was not his original plots, because Shakespeare had 0 original plots, literally 0. He never made up a plot in his life. The thing that made Shakespeare brilliant was his characterization, was his knowledge, and was his ability to bring those things into a form that had emotional resonance, oftentimes much more emotionally resonant than the original story from which he was drawing. So Shakespeare was a straight up thief. The difference between Shakespeare and his contemporaries, the vast majority of them, is that Shakespeare understood the human impact of those stories and was able to convey them in his work. So again, it's execution. It's not being the most innovative guy of all time, and I'm going to come up with it. Is innovation is something which only works in the way that you execute your story, not the fact that the story itself is some never before. Because it's 2018, guys. Like, quite frankly, most stories have been written. The question is how you're going to execute them, and that, here's the good news, is infinitely variable. That is infinitely creative.
I also like to tell myself I am not clever enough to invent any sort of narrative techniques here. Like, I don't convince myself that I am. It's just, it's the same way that all of the Disney stories are based on fairy tales, right? The Beauty and the Beast and all that stuff. But they're so much more impactful than those fairy tales because of the way they're delivered. And as DMs, it's practice. Yes, if you're running an entire campaign, not every session is going to be this crazy weird twist where you do something completely different. But as long as you're practicing that format, once you get it down, you can play with it. You can maybe add some twists in. You can maybe have some complications. You can maybe take away some parts, and it's fine. But the other thing I was going to say was shit. Now I forgot what it was. What was that? What was
I'm
that?
sure the other thing you were going to say was not shit. I don't think you should say that about yourself.
No, I don't remember. It was probably something about NPCs, but
let me go over to Dave, and if you remember, you
probably wasn't that important.
So Dave, hit me. What you got?
Well, I kind of want to go back and interject what we were talking about modularized content. A lot of people. Modular stories are good. I mean, all the work is done for you for the most part. All you have to do is add your own stuff in, adjust it, and don't be afraid to if you don't want to mark up your book, print it off. That's what I do. When I first started running games, I'd print it off and I would have sticky notes all over it. I'd have all the names color coordinated, like red, all the public info that I could share with the party I do in yellow, anything that they had to find out for themselves, the mystery, the intrigue, and all that stuff, I would put in blue. But yes, you have to read ahead, like what Askren was saying, because there may be something 5 pages down the line that you would need to know for the page that you're.
And they don't tell you that. They never do.
So yeah, definitely plan ahead and print off those modules. If you don't want to mark up your book, go for it. Print it off. It costs you what, $3 or $4 to print off something, and mark it up. Use a bunch of highlighters, use sticky notes. I mean, do all kinds of stuff too. That's what I do. And, I give those to my patrons. I give away those every month, like show notes and stuff. And I show how I prepare for games and stuff. So yeah.
That's a neat idea, actually, to being able to give your patrons some of that behind the scenes stuff. That's cool.
That's the thing is I tried to offer. That's why I put up the Razor Coast, the stuff we put up on stream for patrons. But I don't have notes from other campaigns to put up for patrons because it's literally like most of them are like 3 or 4 lines in a notepad document that will usually end up getting closed on accident at some point. So like I don't have them ever.
Askren and Greg, when I was moving, I found this surplus of notes. These are
Oh yeah, no, I don't write. I
look at that.
Not write that much.
These are from my probably my first 3 or 4 years of running games. And man, I was starting to read these because I thought these were gone. I thought they were lost, but when I was moving to El Paso, I found them. And this just brought back so many memories of all the good games, from the years past. And I think the patrons are liking this because they're all marked up, and I put notes on them, and then I put more notes on them. I'm like, what the hell was I thinking here?
Yeah.
Or yeah. I've had people actually reply back to me and say, dude, why are you so hard on yourself?
So, dear previous self, why are you such a moron when you did this thing?
I'll tell you one of the consequences of not doing or not taking a lot of notes. The game that I'm going to is a Pathfinder game that we just played session number 100 not too long ago. And so one of my players is playing a barbarian that is now dead. And a long time ago, I don't remember what session, but it was probably session number 20 or something like that. I made him make a fortitude save against what I think was a disease, but he failed. I think he failed it, and I never told him what it was. And I was just like, it was just one of those things. Like, yeah, okay. And I was going to bring it up later. I don't remember what it was, and so he it just kind of got forgotten. And then for the last within the last 20 sessions, he had asked me a few times, he really wanted to know what it was. And then the last session we played, he was like, all right, dude, so my character's dead. Can you at least tell me what that fortitude save was for? And I'm like, I don't fucking know. I like that you remembered it and it was eating at you this whole time, but I don't know. And I legitimately have no idea what it was for. But no, Arv, you were talking about doing characters, and you were talking about thinking about stuff in between your sessions,
right? And
unironically, not a joke, a lot of the times, because some of the hardest things for me to come up with are when I try and make a realistic campaign, it usually the hardest part tends to be, what is the villain doing at the moment and why? You can put a generic, a bad guy on screen, and you can say he wants to blow up the world, but what he's doing between the start of the campaign and the end of the campaign when the players actually fight him tends to be a bit nebulous, right? In a lot of campaigns. And so figuring out what exactly the villain or a villain that the players are going to fight is doing, or why he's going to do it, or anything about a scene in which kind of there's a confrontation tends to be a little bit more difficult for me. And so what I have done and had a lot of success with, and I highly encourage everyone else to do this too, when you're driving around in your car to work or something, or you're just cleaning your house or whatever, monologue to yourself. Put on your villain's accent and voice and just start monologuing. Say the things that villain might say when he's facing down the players.
Do this in the supermarket, just so it's
do it. No, anywhere you are comfortable doing this.
Let me explain to you in the express lane what I will do to you when I.
and then I it sounds like a joke, but I've driving in my car and just be doing Well, mortals, is this it? Is this all the fury you can muster? It's like you just do those, and it's like, oh shit, that's a really cool scene that I want to put in. That's how I can structure the scene, and you will come up with cool stuff if you just think a lot about your games in between them. And
right,
so yes, that's my advice as a DM. Anywhere you can, put on crazy voices and just talk to yourself.
My son would always stick his head inside of the door and say, "Are you okay, Dad? I don't see anybody else in here."
No.
Talking to himself. The other thing I can say too is, I like to carry a notebook around with me anytime that I leave the house, because just like Askren was saying, when you're out and around, especially if you're a DM and if you do this kind of stuff all the time, you're always looking around and you get ideas just from real world stuff going on all around you. And I'll jot that down really quick in a notebook or something like that, a little personal pad that I carry around. Or if I wake up in the middle of the night, I'll just reach over on my bedstand and grab it and write something down and go back to sleep. I know it sounds crazy, but hell, you'll forget about it. Especially if the more stuff you got going on, you'll think of something and you'll forget about it.
Oh yeah, you won't remember it tomorrow if you don't write it down.
Yeah,
I'm a big proponent of writing stuff down and taking notes for sure.
Agreed. And that's the kind of thing actually, which again, I comparing another thing to writing, this is something that I talk about all the time, is the importance of having some kind of a journal with you, right? That you can actually involve yourself with, because there are going to be times when you need to be able to take information that you don't have time to deal with at the moment, and you need to be able to write some of those notes down. And there's, at this point where smartphones are as ubiquitous as they are, there's not much excuse, for you not to be able to just throw a quick note down, like, and it can be, again, it's about a pattern, like villain top of a tower dangling the hero above the ground or something like, like a 5-second thing like that sort of thing is something which can be very helpful to you to be able to handle stuff later on. But I think one of the things is that I think, here's, because this is the way that biologically we are structured. Our brains take time to spin up, right? And it's especially the case if you are incredibly busy people, is you've got your brain doing a million different things at once. And so when you're
memory is called short-term memory for a reason.
yeah, that's true. I'm not into anything new. No, but like you're constantly trying to spin up into something different. And so if the first time that you've been thinking really about your campaign is, 10 minutes before you sit down to actually play it, it's going to take a while for your brain to spin up to get to that point. And that means you can make some mistakes. It means there can be some confusion. Then now it's okay to admit that you made a mistake, and you should do that. You should not be one of those ones who never, that's fine, but you should not, as a general habit, come into a game and just be like, I don't know what the flip I'm doing. Like that's not the way to do it. And so one of the things that is important then is to get your mind trained to be able to think about this stuff. And that's why thinking about things when you're going to somewhere else is useful, because that's fun stuff too. This goes back to what Dave was saying about it being fun. This isn't, oh my God, I'm so tired of having to think about spreadsheets. Like, you're playing D&D presumably because you have fun with it. And so thinking about, I can't wait to have this awesome set piece play out with my players. Like, I can't wait to show them this like big magical artifact, this great cliffhanger, this whatever the thing is. That thing is exciting, and it's fun to sort of develop that stuff as a writer. It's fun to me to be able to develop scenes that I'm going to be presenting in a novel and a short story. But I don't just do it when I sit down on my regular, writing days, basically 3 to 4 times a week, a few hours each time, and say, okay, now I'm going to start writing. If I did that, I would never get anything done. Like, I get stuff done because I'm basically mentally writing in between sessions. And that's what you can do as a DM also. You could be essentially mentally writing scenes, characters, and things like that, so that when they actually then go in a different direction, part of the reason you're prepared for it is because you've been imagining different possibilities all along. So in a way, Miles Davis used to say that the easier it seems to improvise, the more work the person has done leading up to it. And by that, he meant that he was always thinking about improvisational solos and thinking about structure, stuff that was going on, not by writing thousands of notes, but just by listening and imagining all the time.
And you will get there, right? I out of necessity, because I run so many games a week, and I don't have a lot of time to sit down. Like, I was working full time, I didn't have a lot of time to sit down and prep anything. I just kind of forced myself to be able to just sit down, jot a few notes down, and go. If you don't have that constraint, then you have the luxury of practice, but you will, like, we all get there eventually. It's all about practice. And I think that's what I tell people all the time, especially new DMs. I don't know if we have any fledgling DMs in the audience or anything like that, going into your first session is intimidating. I see it on Twitter all the time. People telling, people tweeting about how nervous they are going into their first DMing experience, right? And you will be nervous, and that's fine.
And you're going to screw up. Don't be afraid to screw up either.
Yeah, that's right.
The great thing about being a dungeon master,
I agree,
is you get another try. Right? You get a second chance. You get a third. You get do-overs because your players, as long as you haven't completely I don't know. There are a few mistakes I suppose you could make that would make your players not come back the next week.
I accidentally blew up the world. I'm sorry.
But barring those very, very outlying cases, they'll be back next week to play again because it doesn't really matter though if you made a mistake or anything. It's not just your thing, right? You're just a piece of the puzzle, and so you'll have a chance to, as long as you, and this is why I tell people in anything, whether it's art, whether it's dungeon mastering, whether it's whatever, you have to be your own critic, right? You have to say, what did I mess up last time? What can I work on next? What can I try and do better next time?
Yes.
And as long as you have that little voice, that little thing in your head, what can I try and do better this time? You will become a better dungeon master.
Yeah. And if you even come back later on, say a week later, the next time you play with your players, say, hey, guys, I think I might have screwed up on this last time. Even though they may not even have thought about it, they'll enjoy the game even that much more.
Yep.
Because
I don't even think you need to admit to screwing up if they don't call you out on it.
Well, it depends.
Actually, it just makes me feel better. I don't know. I guess it's just me, but a couple times I've screwed up with different judgments that I've made, and I'll always come back and say, I think I screwed that up, and we'll do it differently the next time. So,
well, yeah, I think it depends. I mean, one thing to keep in mind is that since we are the ultimate arbiters of our own rules and our own systems, and we run into this a little bit too because we stream on Twitch, and so we have backseating on Twitch is a thing already. Backseat DMing is a thing where you have people who are just like, actually, here's the following way, the 6,000 rules that you didn't consider. Let's be fair. Having one brain completely be able to construct and manage rule systems across multiple characters with multiple variations is extraordinarily difficult. And I am positive that the Matt Mercers and Chris Perkins of the world have made mistakes just like we have in front of audiences, just as we have. And because it's very difficult to keep all of it straight. The key is not whether you keep all the consistency in terms of rules. The key is whether, one, you can keep the action moving. The key is whether the story continues to be good, and whether there is a sort of common understanding of humility where it's a collaborative experience. You're just one person, you can screw up. And what they want to know is that you're able to pull things back on track, that you're not going to have something you're like, guys, I have no idea what to do now, and you just sort of curl up and die, like that. If you assuming that you can figure out a way to get them back onto the track, there is no reason whatsoever that mistakes and multiple mistakes have to permanently derail you. And I think it depends on the scenario, by the way, as to whether you tell them or not tell them. It depends on the circumstances, but you absolutely do not need to be perfect, and no DM, no matter how experienced, is mistake free. Just it doesn't happen. Like I've seen too many of them doing it.
I mean, no musician is going to stop their concert and because they missed a note or something like that.
No, certainly not. But they would tell their band backstage, "This is the stuff that I did," right? And that's
right. No, and it's you can talk about it and you can say, "This is something I need to work on a little bit." That's fine. I think it's the funniest thing that one of the things that Matt told me a while ago was that the fact that he does stream for so many people means that there's whenever he makes a mistake, half of the community blows up about it, and it's like you can't, for some reason the community has decided that he can't use homebrew rules, he can't just make shit up on the fly. If it's not,
but that's part of being a DM, man,
right? If it's not using the stats out of the monster manual or calculated properly, he'll get shit. And I'm like, man, I don't ever want that. Don't even I don't know if you know this, 90% of my monsters don't even have stat blocks. I don't that's just not how I roll.
Hi, Reddit.
I have to step away for a second, guys. I'll be
okay.
Yeah, it's all good.
That's right. And I think one of the things that is important about that is being able to sort of understand that we're involved in this storytelling experiment in a way every time we get involved in stuff, and so not to get sort of too caught up in that stuff. Also, I think it's helpful, and I think chat, obviously I love being able to do D&D on Twitch. I love being able to interact with chat and so forth. I do think, however, that it's important not to DM by committee. And I think that, one of the things that can be dangerous is when you get thrown off by chat making certain determinations about stuff. And that's not, that's not the job. And it's not, frankly, even what chat wants. Chat wants to be able to watch, an audience wants to be able to watch a fun story. And the percentage of people, the loud minority of people that are going to be like, you messed up that rule and I'm never coming back here again, there's very few people that are in that category.
Yeah.
There's a few, but very few. Most of them are going to be in like, I'm loving the story. And maybe later on they'll be like, hey, I think you might have gotten this wrong or whatever. But they're very seldom going to be like, look, I'm out, okay? Because that dude was clearly, that dude was phased when he was hit with a magic missile. That's garbage. Very few people are going to be so caught up in that particular thing. So you need to be careful as a dungeon master to have confidence enough in your ability, not as a DM, but as a storyteller. Yes, you want to be a good DM, but storytelling is your purpose and your function. And so the better you're able to do that, the more that even smaller mistakes can be overlooked.
I think if your intent is to be a streamer or any entertainer, really, and it's weird because you have to sort of exist in this space where you obviously want to hear criticism because you want to know whether people like what you're doing and how you can improve, but you have to sort of have a layer of shielding from it.
Yeah.
When I'm dungeon mastering on my stream, I almost never look at chat. Like, I look at chat sometimes. I actually had someone come in. We were playing a game, and someone came in. Like, they said hello, and some of the people in chat said hello back to them. And then I think they said something that I was running the game, and like it was like within 5 minutes of them coming into the stream, they're like, "Oh wow, yeah, I guess you guys don't look at chat at all. I'm out of here." And it's like, what? Like, we're playing D&D. We're not here to talk to the people in chat. Like, you guys don't want that. You're not coming here to watch that. You're coming here for a game. And it's like you wouldn't, again, I say you wouldn't want it if in the middle of a concert, the performers just stop to say hello to the people who are waving at them in the stands. Like, that's not part of the job description. There might be some artists that do that, just like there might be some streamers that are really, really interactive in chat if that works for them. But I think as dungeon masters, like, you kind of have to have. You have to have the conviction of in yourself. Like, if you're gonna mess up, that's fine. Like, I'll mess up and let's not make a big deal out of it. Let's deal with it after the fact. But we're gonna mess stuff up, and I don't know how many ways that can be said. Critical Role says it a lot, because their fans get all up on them for it. It's like, the DMs and the players are gonna mess some stuff up, and that's cool. Whatever. Yeah. It's a game. We don't all have encyclopedic knowledge of the rules. We don't all have the rule books in front of us at all times. And honestly, if the little hiccup doesn't bother the story and it doesn't bother the flow and the narrative is still good,
that's the key.
Who cares?
Yep.
Yeah, really.
That's the key. And I think that I think the place where that you can come under criticism is if you don't take the collaborative experience seriously, if you don't take the story seriously, if you don't, that sort of thing, which doesn't mean, by the way, that you can't tell non-serious stories. But what I mean is, whatever the context is, you want to at least take the game seriously enough that you're working together for common experience. So that's why I will never sort of like I hate the kind of self-aware, we're playing D&D, guys. What a good, like that. I don't love super self-aware, snarky, self-conscious. This is such stupid garbage that we're playing D&D. That stuff annoys me because I think that essentially it's
other streams where people play D&D ironically.
Now, fortunately, very few, and I'm not going to name names, but I ran into one the other day.
Geez.
There's a couple that I'm just
kind of like, send me the link. I want to watch that.
Yeah. This thing was anyway. But like, so that kind of thing is ridiculous. But as beyond that though, taking seriously that you didn't get Rule 5 on page 63, come on. That's not necessary. And as Optic says, yeah, the first thing D&D books state is that it's a collection of guidelines, not a definitive rule book, and that's 100% right. And they would be the first ones to tell you, the folks at WotC, that they want you to be working with things, as opposed
But
to
it's not
else.
even just D&D. Like maybe my 5th edition, I want to use countdown clocks from Blades in the Dark, right? Like
Right.
maybe I want to use a rule from about narrative positioning from what the hell is it, Dungeon World,
Yep.
right? Like who that if
That's
if it
your call,
works and
right?
it serves
Exactly.
the story. I don't see why it matters, because there might be some people that are watching entertainment for the rules, but I don't think that's usually the case. And if it is, then that's fine. I'm sure there's an entertainer out there that will provide that,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. There will be-
But you as a dungeon master don't have to, right?
That's right.
You can do what works for you and your players.
I agree. All right. Well, let's shift over then, since we've talked about that a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about things that we've got that are cool in terms of.
Can I interject one more time?
Sure. Yeah.
No,
to
you're-
wrap
you're
up
right.
this thing, go
Talking
ahead, Dave.
about creating our own adventures, and I
Yeah,
wanted to interject this earlier, but my short-term memory forgot. But when I was just sitting on the pot back there, it came back into my short-term memory. So
Go with it then.
talking about, just taking bullet point notes, and whenever you get to a certain area, say you walk into an alchemy shop or something in a town, reverse it back on your players. Ask them. I started experimenting with this probably a couple years back, and I would ask my players, okay, so I'm going to reverse the role, and I'm going to make you like a very short-term DM. What do you see inside of this alchemy store? So
That's interesting.
I would ask them and kind of reverse it back on them, or what do you see in this room in the dungeon, or what do you see here in the cavern? So sometimes I'll put it back on the players, but as I was doing this, I noticed that you can't do it to every player that you have.
No,
because
exactly.
No.
You have to do this on the players that will actually engage with this and actually run with it. So you have to be careful. Yeah, but that's just basically knowing your players anyway and the limitations of your players. So, but definitely reverse the role back on them. If you haven't tried it, try it a couple times. Your players may embrace it, they may not embrace it. So it's something cool to try too. But anyway, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. One thing I want to say is one thing that I do recommend, and that's beyond the scope of what we talked about here, but maybe we can get into this next month. But is that having, and this is a very common thing, having players describe what they're doing in the process of a particular combat move, or walking into a particular store, the way that they are stealthily moving down into the dungeon, what specific things are they doing. Those kinds of descriptions I always like to reverse onto the players, because I think it really gives them a sense. It places them more in the action. It gives you a better sense of what they're doing, which allows you to play off of them. So there's multiple ways to do it, rather than just I check for traps. Like, what does that mean? Like, what
I was
does it
going
mean
to say,
check for traps?
it just
I
Like,
swing my
as a
longsword.
DM,
yeah.
As levels. It's
as a
boring.
DM,
Yeah.
asking your players what they're doing, like literally, it just buys you a couple seconds to figure something out, right?
Right,
To think
yeah.
about
That's
something
true.
cool.
That's
Most
true.
four famous words for a dungeon master. What are you doing?
What are you doing? Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the four
Like-
most common used words probably.
use
by me.
it to buy yourself a couple seconds. Use it to kind of find out what the players want out of a particular scene.
Yep.
It helps. It's a really, really great tool in a lot of ways. Is just figuring out what your players are thinking at the moment.
I agree. All right, let's shift on to some product stuff. In the interest of letting people continue, I will talk about product. I will start off with this one. I'm going to be that guy, and I was joking with Dave. Was like, more Cubicle 7. I know he was kidding, but I can't help it. Like, I get stuff from them. The reason that I'm talking about this particular thing right now, which is the Eves of Mirkwood and Lore Masters screen, is because I actually pre-ordered this from them a while ago, but it took a while for the shipment to get here. This thing is amazing. So first of all, it's got an actual lead-in introductory adventure called Eves of Mirkwood, which is neat. It basically is a way that you could do a one-shot AME campaign, Adventure of the Middle-earth campaign, which is pretty neat. Or one-shot adventure, I should say, Adventure of the Middle-earth adventure. And it introduces a lot of the basics. There's a short journey within it. There's an audience within it. Like a lot of the rules that we talked about that are specific to AME. As usual, the art and the maps are gorgeous. They also have some optional class rules, and they have some pre-generated characters in here. So they've got a Barding, a Bjorning, they've got a Woodman of Wilderland, they've got different people like that that you can add in. And then there's the screen itself. And the screen itself, which I will show here. On the inside, you've got stuff like, as I rip my headphone wire out of my computer, on the inside, they've got stuff like starting attitudes to different characters and an audience, anguish, basic rules summaries, an embarkation table road, an arrival table, basically the sort of stuff that you would need specific to AME. Thank you for the follow, EMC. And then on the outside, and I'm just highlighting this because, man, I love how gorgeous the art is a big full color thing of Lake Town. And oh my God, just like looking at Lake Town, I showed this on screen on my stream a couple of days ago, and I had one of my good friends who's an artist was just like, ooh, because it's hard to explain how inspirational this is for a dungeon master. And I do want to say one of the things that I think supplements can do really well, having nothing to do with any tangible rules or class structure or race, suggestions in terms of racial benefits or whatever. Besides all of that, just the ability to get you into the mindset of that world is enormous. And art is a big part of that. So when you have these beautifully put together supplements, it's really awesome to just sort of feel yourself sinking into the comfortable world of, in this case, Middle-earth, and being able to see Lake Town, where a lot of the early adventures take place, immediately, like you were saying, like we were talking about just a moment ago, Askren, with the River Valley, really gets you thinking about the people that are in there. What kinds of people would you find within these tight little alleyways and spots in between this, water-dominated village, because the whole thing is literally built on platforms on a lake. It's just really, really cool stuff. And I think that AME, the Cubicle 7, has done a beautiful job with the art of this. So I was geeking out quite a bit about this. And unfortunately, on Roll20, I'm not going to be able to show anybody, using a Lore Master screen. But if I run this stuff live,
Excuse me.
exactly. But if I'm using this live, the sort of live in person type of thing, it's going to be exciting to use this. So anyway, I recommend it highly, and not just because they sponsored the campaign. It's really, really cool stuff. So that's
I was
what
going
I
to
got.
ask if that was Lake Town. That's good.
What have you got, gentlemen? Have you got either one of you got something you want to talk about?
Askren, you want to go ahead?
So there was a group of products that got a Kickstarter recently put together, and it caused me to actually go back and look at them. And so I went to check out the pirate stuff from Legendary Games, because I wanted to. I saw they were converting it all to 5e, and I wanted to check it out to see if it had any utility for my current campaign. And they have a couple of different things. I did kind of enjoy the treasure book and the book about that had the pirate crew and the were sharks in it, because that fit really well into my campain. It's like,
I'm sorry. Did you say were sharks?
Yeah, I don't know if you know, but were sharks are a huge thing in Razor Coast.
Were sharks. I have actually watched a little bit of Razor Coast. I was not aware there were were sharks, but I'm
not yet. They haven't come up in the campaign yet, but they are very much like, if you've ever seen there's on the cover there is Captain Bethany Razor, and there's a big shark above her with man arms, and that's a were shark.
I feel constrained to ask.
Created a couple of tokens, were shark tokens too, and whales and all kinds of stuff.
I'm definitely, I'd seen those somewhere, and I don't remember what book I saw them in, but I'm definitely going to use a whale person.
Now I have to ask: is the human form of this were shark named Finn? Thank you. I'll be here all week. Thank you. I'm sorry. I've been saving that up for a while, and I'll just be over here.
No, Finn is a cleric in my game that I'm playing after this, though. No, it was the modules. Like, it came with a couple little plug-in adventure modules, which the Legendary Games, I think, has a problem with their Adventure Path plugin modules. They tend to be really short, and they tend to start with a really cool, flavorful first half, and then the second half is just sort of a generic dungeon slog. So we reviewed these all on stream, and some of them had some really good ideas, but they got kind of generic and boring. But I think they're really cool springboards. But the book about treasure, the book about the swashbuckler archetypes and stuff that you can use, the pirate crew book, And then there's like one or two. Oh, the one about ship combat and ship parts. I think those are all really interesting. And so if you're looking for more pirate themed stuff, their Kickstarter should be out soon. It's like $30, and you get like the whole booklet of it. It was a decent value. I tend to like Legendary games. Their stuff is cool. It fits right in with a lot of campaigns. They have a lot to choose from. So
plus they don't do just fantasy either. So that's another.
Right.
They have a pretty wide range. And if you are a Pathfinder fan, they tend to have stuff that is designed to fit right into the adventure paths that Pathfinder have. So they have like one for Jade Region, one for Crimson Throne, all that stuff. So lots of different flavors of stuff. And that I like it. It kind of adds more options and cool things to your games. So check them out if you like.
Yeah, and you can actually cobble stuff together sometimes as well. If you're dealing with like your themed, pirate themed type of thing, you can actually draw this stuff together and then mix and match basically. So
that's why I love checking out. Like anytime I'm running a campaign, I'm like, okay, what can I find that matches this theme that I can. That's why we reviewed them on stream when we were doing our Razor Coast prep, because it's like, let's review these modules and see the supplements and see what we can pull out and put in our world as we're building it.
That's So I dig that. Ten of Clubs, Were Sharks, Jawsome. I see what you did there. That's
yes,
good. That's good work.
Street Sharks. There should be a ship full or a gang that buries under the sand, and
I love it. Yeah, exactly. I love it. I'm looking forward to it. So Dave, what do you got?
I got a couple of products. We got a couple minutes left, so I'll just go back. Since I've moved to El Paso, I'm going to start running an around the table game live in person. I've met some people at a couple of game stores around here, and we're going to start playing in like July. So I've been stocking up and just whoring up all these Pathfinder map packs and tile packs. And, I have a bunch of stuff from the 3.5 and 4th edition era. So, you can go on the Paizo website and you can buy these. I mean, I've bought quite a few of these now. Those are just small double-sided packs. I've also bought a bunch of the flip mats and stuff as well.
Oh, nice.
Are you down with my boys over at Heroic Maps?
I have not seen Heroic Maps yet.
Good stuff.
I've also picked up the new D&D tile sets, which are basically regurgitation from the
old ones.
The 3.5 and 4th edition stuff that I have in Tupperware things here. I've got them all sorted. Same thing basically, but nonetheless, you can never have too many tiles. And what I plan on doing is taking these and putting that crafting putty under it and kind of pre-building them on a hard sheet attack board.
Oh, cool.
We actually play, so I'll put everything out and then I'll cover it up with pieces of construction paper and stuff that I'll have cut out. So, but I'm basically stocking up on all of the utility stuff for the DM. I just got a nice new castle dungeon master screen that'll probably take up half the table, and
nice.
It's got like a turn tracker on it and all that other stuff. So I'm looking forward to starting to play around the game. I don't think I'll be streaming it, but I will be taking pictures and probably doing like a blog about it.
I think every streamer should have one off-stream game just to.
Yeah, sure.
I do too with my family actually. That's
have you ever first time ever playing, ever DMing around the table as an adult?
Yeah, that was. I remember you saying that, and I was just thinking about that. Like it's one of those things you're going to go and be like, all right, well, I'm just going to click on the dynamic lighting. I can't do this.
My first time DMing was at Gen Con. When I'd been doing it online for years. Like
nice. No,
well,
I started
right in there.
I don't know if you've been watching any of the streams, but over the last month, I've been doing a lot of unboxing of miniatures.
Yep.
And I've bought a case of each over since 2014. Every time Icons of the Realms releases Tyranny of Dragons or Rage of Demons, I literally bought a full case with this. So now that I have the room to display all of this, as you can see on my kitchen table back there, that whole box is doubles and triples of miniatures that I have. So I'm going to have like about a 500 miniature lot that I'm going to put on eBay of all the doubles. But I have over here on this new wall that I just built of shelving, I've got all my miniatures organized over there I've totally nerdatoried this up and put everything by monstrosities and
wow.
demons and fiends. Oh, it's awesome. It's beautiful. I've taken a lot of pictures and put them out on my Discord channel. I'm going to be doing that stuff, show stuff off on Facebook too. So, man, I'm totally looking forward to running the game around the table. It is going to be so fun, and I can't wait because I've got like player portfolios for all my players. I mean, I literally have all of the spell cards for all my players.
Oh
and stuff.
man,
I
you
mean,
are
they
not
gonna be
joking
so
around.
Spoiled, man. I mean, I have totally hoarded this up, and I admit it, and I'm really looking forward to it. So I've just been buying all kinds of utility stuff.
No,
So-
that's cool. There's a purity to that around the table stuff. That I really
here's
love.
a plug. If you're close to El Paso, and if you're interested in playing some 5e and some Savage Worlds and some Starfinder around the table, holler at me.
Yeah, there you go. You
Apparently
could,
all
the
at once.
world famous, the Masters of the Dungeon famous, and Digital DM famous Dave. You could have this guy, celebrity DMing for you.
Can he function without Fantasy Grounds? Come
Yeah, that's
see.
a good point. He's like, "Where's my dynamic lighting at? God damn it!"
Well, I actually told myself, Askren, that I am not going to be using it as a utility. I am literally. We are going to be doing this.
No, that's why I was joking. I'm like,
Yeah.
like. That's like saying me. It's like, fuck. Can I actually operate without a PDF to search? Like,
No,
how do I
scared
look
as
through a
hell.
book like a normal person?
I'm scared as hell, Askren, to be honest. And another thing that I've done too is, I don't know if you guys have seen Zovia's maps, but she has a patron page, and they are absolutely beautiful maps for $1 a piece.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, they're beautiful. And I found a printing store, a little mom and pop store, and there's mom and pop stores for everything in El Paso. There's actually TV VCR repair stores that I haven't seen in 20 years. There's stores that you can go in and get your shoes fixed, shoe repair stores. I mean, it's just insane what El Paso has. But anyways, I found a small mom and pop store, and they're actually going to print all of Zovia's maps for me with the 1-inch grids, and they're going to print those for $6 a piece and laminate them for me. So I've got like 40 down there right now that they're going to print out for me and laminate them. So I'm going to have such an arsenal of maps. Man.
Nice.
It's going to be. Yeah. Anyway, that's it. I'm spent.
no, I'm spent.
For stopping by.
So I know that Dave's got to rise up on out of here, but I want to give chat to throw in a couple questions at us if I can. You got like 5 minutes, Dave? Is that cool? All right. So let's do that. Chat. The way we do this is, as you may remember, but if you haven't, here's the way you do it: is you drop us you say question in the chat in all capital letters, colon, and then the question that you want to throw at us. And you can ask us anything about DMing or any of that kind of stuff. Drop it our way, and we will answer as best we can. Hit us with a couple before we wrap up for the evening. So let us know. Have you got questions that you want to send our way? And actually, I will say that question. This is a test. There you go. Yes, perfect, Echo. Thank you. Yeah, actually, I had to laminate. I had to get print out and then laminate a map for this thing I did called Night at the Forbidden Library, which was something I did for authors at Gen Con last year, which was a big success. And I'm going to be doing a follow-up to that called Return to the Forbidden Library. And I'm hoping to be able to run that again because the video of it sort of didn't work quite as well as I hoped it would and only kind of half recorded. But the map that I had to make for that when I was like, it was back in my roots because for 20 years, I mean, I've only been using basically DMing online for about 5. So for about 20 years, I was all physical maps and all tiles and all, and so going back to that now was really fun to be able to get back to the roots, as it were, back in the day. So
all the whistles, I'm ready to go, man.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to do any DMing at Gen Con this year. Well, I probably will. But I'm going there press this year, so I'm not like bound to a company, which is actually. So I might just open some tables and I hand drew my maps on big gridded poster paper, and that was what I ended up running. And unfortunately, because I can't not overdo it. They were like ridiculously detailed and they took me forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I shouldn't have done that.
The players appreciated that though, I bet.
No, I bet the players got a lot
No,
out of it.
they looked nice. They just took me, like I was racing to get them done. By the time I was like an hour to get on my flight, and I'm like, fuck, I gotta finish this map.
I hand draw anything, and my players would just be like, that would be great if we had any idea what you were doing. The hell is that? Like
That's why grids help.
My art skills are non-existent. Like grids are not. I love maps, but
painted miniatures too, because the eyeballs on the back of their head.
Exactly.
Have you guys ever seen the maps that I made for my Crimson Throne campaign and shit?
No, I don't think so. I don't think you should.
While we're waiting, I'll send you them after the show.
Yes.
Oh man, I wish I still had time to do those all. fucking forever.
It'll be good stuff. I would definitely like to see some of those. I love, I love the maps anyway, regardless of where they are. So, last chance, Chad. You got any questions you want to throw at us? My art, you thought it was my daughter's? No, my daughter's a better artist than I am. Like, my 10-year-old is better at drawing than I am. I have creative skills that I am proud of. My artistic creative skills are not among those skills. Music, yes. Writing, yes. Art, not so much.
Sing a song for us, Arv.
Yeah, there you go. I could sing a map into existence. I'd be happy to do that for him, but man. And actually, it's funny because I do play off of those things that I am good at, and they do not involve the drawing of art. Like I sometimes feel as I'm trying to sort of roughly shape out something. I'm like, no, this is not. They have no idea. What did you? Is that a peanut? What is that? Like, no, I was a dragon. You're just like, that's not a dragon. That's a peanut. Like, all right, well, yeah. So, yeah, it's not good.
My favorite is when I try and do like theater of the mind. Like I try, because in some of my games I don't use maps, and I'm trying to like describe the room, and the players are like is this there? Like, where is the? And I'm like, fuck it, let me just roll 20, grab the draw tool, and just draw the fucking map out on the screen. And I'm like, you guys, I'm trying to improve my theater of the mind here, but you're making me fucking draw stuff.
Right. Yeah, the yeah, that's the link to Amal singing. Yeah, well, I mean, Mal did a great job with that. No, I have done a fair bit.
That reminds
actually.
me, I have to sing a song in an upcoming fucking Crimson Throne game.
Nice, dude. No, that I do. I mean, I have no problem doing that. I love that.
I do.
But the other stuff is.
That's why I'll never play a bard. Because I expect it.
Well, see, right. There is that where they could be like, why don't you sing some more? You have to be careful with that, I find, as a DM. If you've got someone who is a singer and enjoys doing that as bard, that's one thing. But if you've got someone who played a bard and they really are not the kind of person that wants to be constantly bothered about, like, I sing an inspiration, how does that go? Like,
Yeah, I try and push some players to do that, and they're just like, they just don't give you nothing, and it's like, all right.
Yeah, that's not exactly. There's moments where these things are just kind of like, I don't even. Yeah. Thank you, by the way, for the auto host, by the way, Saber. And so last call, questions? No, everyone just amazed. We've said everything there is to be said. That's possible. It's possible that we don't everything.
It's all good.
That we've addressed everything that people could ever have. All right. Well, I will, in that case, I will start moving us to close up here. And we can do a little bit of wrap up, I guess. But if people have a question they want to throw in our direction, you can definitely do that. I will move in the opposite direction then, and I will start with our good friend Askren. Askren, good stuff tonight as always. I know you've got your Pathfinder campaign going on right after this. But where will the people see you on the interwebs next?
Yeah, I mean, as always, I try and hang out when I can, because I am always down to talk about Dungeon Master stuff. It's one of my favorite things to do. And thank you guys for hanging out with us in chat. Hope you guys enjoyed our tips and tidbits and bits of mind matter that we've scattered all over your computer screens. But no, thank you guys for hanging out. If you guys enjoyed my ramblings and you want to see more of me, you can go check out twitch.tv/exploding dice. It is a Twitch live stream channel for Dungeons and Dragons and other role-playing games, where we play live games 5 to 6 days a week, Tuesday through Sunday. And you can get all kinds of stuff. You can get pirates, you can get horror, you can get Mouse Guard, you can get a Hobbit like Daubers, which is our homebrew fantasy whimsical thing, and then you can also get other things like video games and art and DM prep and all that good stuff. And so come say hi, hang out, and we'd love to see you there.
Yes, confirmed. You should definitely check out. Askren runs a lot of really cool adventures on his channel, so you guys should absolutely check him out over there. And as always, thank you, Askren. Great pleasure, as always.
Thank you for having me.
Moving right over to Dave. Dave, now that you are safely ensconced down there in El Paso, besides the live El Paso games, where will the fine people see you next online?
You guys will be able to see me on my Twitch channel now that I don't have as many games going on. I have been doing a lot more product reviews, unboxings, talking about DM. I'm also in the middle of starting to create my own world. I'm taking the 10 3-inch ring note binders that I've been creating over since I was a kid that I can't even read the writing anymore. I'm trying to decode it with my Ovaltine decoder. I'm starting to put all of that into a game now. I'm starting to create a modified 5th edition setting so you can hang out on my stream. It's twitch.tv/thedigital-DM. And follow the channel and you get live notifications when I go live. Or you can check out my YouTube channel as well. So
also check out Dave's webpage, which is the Digital DM, because he has many. He has an incredible database of characters sorted by level and class and race for 5e, which I have, which I freely acknowledge I have used before for pre-generated characters. It's a really good resource.
I'd like to expand on that too, Arv, that you mentioned that. So if anybody would like to help, because this is all, it was all community driven in the first place. I didn't make all 1,500 of those sheets, but it is community driven. And if anybody wants to help, especially with the new races and the new archetypes that have been put out in the last official WotC products, feel free to contact me on my contact button, or you can send me a message here on Twitch or wherever. There's plenty of ways to get a hold of me. And let me know if you want to make any character sheets, and I'll give you the credit for it, and I'll put them up on the site for you. And I'm also in the process of putting Fantasy Grounds characters on there too, level 1 through 20 for all the different 5e stuff. So
it's good stuff. I just put the link, www.digitaldungeonmaster.com. So definitely check that out. Dave's stuff is a very good resource. And Dave, my friend, always a pleasure. And it was good to have you back in the saddle.
Always good. Yeah, thanks. Good to be back. Askren, good to see you as well.
It's always a pleasure, guys. One quick note, also announcement that I want to make too, is about the player not available that you see above. So I do want to mention that Will, of course, from Encounter Roleplay, has been our consistent fourth member of the group. But unfortunately, Will is going to have to step back for a while. This is basically due to something that I think everyone here can identify with, and it is trying to avoid burnout. Will is just overloaded, and if you want to talk about a guy who is the hardest working man in show business, like, Will is ridiculous. Like, Will does stuff, 6 billion podcast shows and like everything else. And I actually have been sort of jokingly, he refers to me as his internet dad. I've been trying to get him to be like, dude, you got to rest sometime. And so he is going to have to take a step back for a while from the show. We are going to be bringing in another regular member. In fact, I already have 2 or 3 people that I'm thinking about for that. So we will bring another person in to join Dave and Askren and myself. And we will have, of course, continue to have guest stars as we've had, I think, at the first 5 to 6 episodes. This is episode 6, and I think we've had like 4 guests in those 6 shows. So we will continue to bring in guests from the larger D&D community for you. But I did want to mention that we will. Will is still going to be with us. He's still going to be doing the Adventures of Middle Earth campaign with me and all that stuff. He's not going anywhere overall, but he did need to back up a little bit, sort of step back a bit. So he sends his apologies. He loves all of you and all that, but he needs some sleep sometimes, and I cannot obviously blame him for that. So we're big fans of Will, and we will have him back here again. But in the meantime, the 3 of us will soldier on, and we will have a new regular member that we will put in place very soon. But that's going to do it for us for tonight, folks. So I'm going to let these gentlemen go. Again, make sure you follow their channels and check them out, because they are awesome DMs and awesome people. And Dave, Askren, gentlemen, again, great pleasure, and I will see you guys next month.
Take care, guys.
Can we get some love for them, chat? Some love.
Askren, thanks again. Greg.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
We'll spoon later, Arvin. See you.
As always. Oh, man. Always good times. So that was the stuff with Dave. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Okay, so let me just quickly get rid of these things so I can make sure I've got that going on. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of this. Let's turn on that. Good. The power of studio mode compels you. There we go. Good stuff. All right, guys. So that was good. I hope you guys enjoyed that and had fun with it. And what I'm trying to decide to do, because I basically was going to run, normally I like to run until about 12:15, 12:30. So I've got about another hour in me. So I think what I'll probably do is I'll probably switch up the title of the stream, and I'll probably give I'll probably give Pool of Radiance a try for about an hour or so. I do want to mention that starting tomorrow, we got a lot of D&D going on. We've got D&D tomorrow with Infinity and Beyond. On Tuesday, we've got D&D with we've got Adventures of Middle Earth, and then we've got Dungeons and Dragons with GOG. So I've got my Storm King's Thunder campaign. Then on Friday, a week from today, actually, we have the next Esper Genesis session, which is our new sponsored campaign from Alligator Alley Entertainment. That's our awesome science fiction space opera thing with 4 awesome players. That's happening Friday. And then Saturday is more D&D goodness with Infinity and Beyond. So we have a lot of D&D coming up over the next week. So I think I'm going to try to do a little bit of more of Pool of Radiance if I can. But I'm going to stop the recording first so I can get that locked in, and then I'll restart it. So I'm going to say goodbye for Masters of the Dungeon.